had to bust a you. Came right back to get that loot. No, I had to finish what I started. No, it ain't too late to turn around, is it? I had to bust a you. Came right back to get that loot. No, I had to finish what I started. No, it ain't too late to turn around. Turn around. Running up the numbers on the cash chase. Stretching out the work just like elastic. With a bankroll. Know her ass is fake cause her eyelashes. Stepping out the beam of dirty bands on. Catching up on them offers I don't need though. Long as I am a legend in my hometown. Respect is why I did it from the get-go. Yeah, no, I can't wait today. I can't wait today. Thought I lost it all like everything. Like everything. Came back from my bag, I'm back to play. But don't play with me. I can turn it all around today. I ain't never late, never late. I can't wait today. I can't wait today. I need my bed like yesterday. Like yesterday. Green light on the lake. Don't play with me. I can turn it all around today. I ain't never late, never late.
Double, triple, check. Gonna left a couple bags on the stand. Feeling like I owe a couple. Now I'm getting back like I never left. Bang a left.
I had to bust a you. Came right back to get that loot. No, I had to finish what I started. No, it ain't too late to turn around.
Do not come after me. No, you don't wanna do that. Do that. And I'm hoping that you all agree. You don't want a problem. True that. True that. And I'm schooling you all just a little. Probably like it was a new rap. New rap. And I'm claustrophobic a lot. And I think you better move back. Fall back now. Please get up, wait for me. I don't really wanna talk about nothing. Shut up. My money ain't what it's supposed to be. That's when the guns start buzzing. Bang, clang, 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 clang. Shells in the floor. More shots coming. More shots coming. And instead of you trying to talk to me, better talk about running. Everything about me new. I'm back in the know what to do. Best you ever saw. Heavy metaphor. Medical. Precautions will be needed. Crazy like a pack of animals. Hope you all got a proper view. So sick, I need to let the doctor through. Look, yes, respect this rap. Never miss a step. Disrespect. Give a about your plug. You know, be the plug connect. Double, triple, check. Gonna left a couple bags on the stand. Feeling like I owe a couple checks. Now I'm getting back like I never left. Bang a left.
I had to bust a you. Came right back to get that loot. Finish what I started. No, it ain't too late to turn around.
I want to welcome all of those that are just now coming in. We're still getting some people coming in. I see some people that I know. Brother Lomax, how you doing, man? I appreciate you having your people on. Shout out to all the kids that's on from Lawrence Central, Lawrence North, Ben Davis. We even got people all the way from Illinois that's a part of this. And we're going to shout out a lot of those people tonight during this event. But I also want to make sure that you understand that, especially the student athletes. We have some coaches on, we have parents on. This particular forum is about the students. This is all about trying to show you guys that me coming up as a young kid, I never had the opportunity to have NBA players, NFL players, professionals take the time out to want to help me become a better human being. So to be able to have people like George Hill from the Indiana Pacers, Robert Mathis from the Indianapolis Colts, Super Bowl champion, this all-time sack leader from the Indianapolis Colts, my young fella, Miles Turner, who was a guy who basically could have came to the NBA straight from high school, went to college at the University of Texas, balled out at his freshman year, and at 6'11", he was the 11th pick chosen by the Indiana Pacers, and he's still doing big things. And then we also have Jacoby Brissett, who's going to be joining us later. They still have practice that he's going to be coming from. So we're lucky to have guys like that to be a part of this forum. And again, I want to shout out the sponsors, Indiana Black Expo and the Lilly Foundation. What I want to do now is talk about this poll question, and the way that this is going to work. We're going to ask 3 questions, and some of these questions, some of the kids may know, and some of them may not know. And I'll give like a brief overview and a definition of what these questions, what they mean, and the definition of them. So, for example, and it's important that you young people engage in this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to get your Cash App to incentivize you to make sure you pay attention to what's going on, because this is really important and it's a really important dialogue. We're not going to be talking about a lot of X's and O's as it pertains to how does Robert Mathis, what techniques does he use to, what did he use to become the all-time sack leader for the Indianapolis Colts. What we will do, we will stress upon Robert Mathis to talk about the discipline and the things that he had to go through day in and day out that not only apply on the football field, but it applies in his day-to-day life, which would not allow him to be where he is if he didn't have discipline and understanding to become the person that he was on the football field. So in these 3 polling questions, the first one is going to be, do you understand how to be an agent of change in your community? And so what does that mean? An agent of change is someone who sees a problem in their community, large or small, and does something to take action for substantial change. So that could be somebody who, you know, if you're a person and you see someone being bullied, you can become an agent of change by stepping up for that person and making sure that that person understands that there are people there that care about them. And, you know, no matter what goes on through life, that shows strong character about you as a person. The second polling question is going to be, do you understand how to be civically engaged and advocate on behalf of issues that you care about? As an example, to be civically engaged, you know, we just kind of went through this with the voting process, and a lot of young people were involved in that, and a lot of young people saw what happened to George Floyd. And what that did is it prompted young people to get out and protest in large numbers. So by you protesting and volunteering and doing these things to help other people understand that was your civic right to do, i.e. Martin Luther King, John Lewis, they were civically engaged in their communities. And then the next one is going to be, are you currently committed to strive for academic or career success? That's pretty self-explanatory. You're in high school now. You may think that you have the physical skill sets to become a George Hill, a Miles Turner, a Robert Mathis, or Jacoby Brissett. But without your academics and you understanding the importance of academics, then it means absolutely nothing, because no major school is going to bring you in without making sure you have the proper GPA. So what I want to do right now is I want to pop those poll questions up. And again, I would ask you these questions, but it's real simple. All I need you to do is press yes or no. So right now on your screen, you should see a poll question. All you have to do is press yes or no. Do you understand how to be agents of change in your community? And again, we'll talk about this as we go through the program tonight, as we tie it into how this will help you as you proceed in life to become a professional, whether if it's a professional at sports or if you become a pro at becoming a teacher, a counselor, whatever it is. So I see blah, blah, 44, we're still going. Okay, we can end that poll question. So there's 7 people that said that they don't understand what an agent of change is. So throughout this conversation, I'll be tapping on with some of the questions to the pro athletes. I'll be talking about becoming an agent of change and how they implement that in their day-to-day lives, from high school to college to the pros. And then, like Robert Mathis is retired, and he's still being an agent of change in his community. The second poll question is, do you understand how to be civically engaged and advocate on behalf of issues that you care about? So again, civically is what we talked about. Do you understand how to go out and use your voice like a lot of people did during the protest? So if you were a young person that went downtown and participated in the protest and you marched downtown, that's being civically engaged. So if you can answer yes or no to that question. And for those who don't understand, again, we'll talk about this as we continue to move forward. So I know it's more people on here than this because we have more people answer. Waiting on a few more people. Okay, and then we'll go to the third question. And again, when this is over, we'll ask these questions again just to make sure you picked up on it. But make sure you stay on because I want to make sure you participate. I get your Cash App, and randomly I'm going to pick different people that we're going to ask questions to. And this is a part of being engaged. This is a part of you being a leader. This is a part of when your coaches are going to require you to step outside of your comfort zone to be a leader on the football field or on the basketball court. These same practices carry over from your day-to-day life to what you do in your professional career. This next question is, are you currently committed to strive for academic or career success? Are you currently committed to strive for academic or career success? We should get nothing but 100 on this. Are you currently committed to strive for academic career success? And again, it doesn't matter how great of a physical athlete you are on the football field or on the basketball court. If you're not a professional athlete in the classroom, you can rest assured you won't make it to a D1. You won't make it to a D2. You won't make it to an NAIA. So make sure you answer that question fully. And I think we're there. So that is just that simple. And before this is over, we'll come back and ask those same questions. So right now, what I want to do, I want to go into this portion of asking the questions to our panelists. And I'm going to start with the local kid, my little brother, George Hill, 12 years in the NBA. Before we do that, let's give these guys their proper introduction. Let's go back and let's do this intro one more time because this is really important. So let's kick that intro off for him, Tanya.
Is an Indianapolis product, graduated from Broad Ripple High School, and then on to IUPUI, where he earned his college degree before being drafted by the San Antonio Spurs. Now 12 years into the league, let's make some noise for your homeboy, number 3, George Hill. Our next panelist was a one-year star at the University of Texas before being drafted in 2015 with the number 11 pick in the first round by your very own Indiana Pacers. Y'all make some noise for 6'11", number 33, Miles Turner. Our next panelist started his career in Florida before going to North Carolina State University. In 2016, he was drafted by the New England Patriots, and in his same year, he won a Super Bowl championship. And now, he's a star quarterback for your Indianapolis Colts. Make some noise for number 7, Jacoby Brissett. And last but not least, he's a 14-year star from Alabama A&M University, a defensive end, a 5-time Pro Bowl champion, all-time sack leader for the Indianapolis Colts with 123 sacks. He is a Super Bowl champion. Let's make some noise for number 98, quarterback death date, Robert Mathis.
There we go. Give it up, y'all, for our panelists out here tonight. Y'all got to clap it up for them. That's what it is. We put a lot of work into that intro to make that happen. Hey, Rob, that made you feel good, huh?
Oh, yes, sir.
All right, brother. You know I got that quarterback death date up in there. So I'm going to start this off with my first question, again, going to George Hill. You know, this past summer was really hard for a lot of us, and a lot of students that's on this, a lot of you guys, you had to endure this going to school and understanding what it felt like to see a brother be in a situation that George Floyd was. This guy right here, George Hill, laid it all on the line. Earlier this month, he and myself, Miles Turner, and a couple of other NBA, NFL, WNBA people, we had a Zoom call, and we talked about the importance of where you come from in life. George, how important was it for you to stay focused growing up in the inner city and still staying focused to understand that no matter what you were going through in life, you had a vision to get you to where you are right now?
I mean, for sure. First of all, I just gotta say thanks for letting me be on this panel. It's a blessing. But I mean, the biggest thing was, like you said, having that vision. I grew up in a really rough neighborhood that was corrupt with gang violence and drug dealing and things like that. So, you know, my family was a big corporate of all those things, and I just seen how they would start to go away one by one. We were losing so many young cousins at an early age. A lot of uncles were going to jail for life and things like that. So I kind of clicked in my head, like, do I want to go that route to be just like the rest, or do I want to be different? And I tried to challenge myself into those things. Once you start to see so many things that you don't like, it almost becomes insanity for you to do the same exact thing. So that was my thing. I always wanted to be different. I didn't want to be the same as everyone else. I wanted to go my own path, go down my own road, and see if where that leads me. You know, I didn't know where it would lead me. I'm thankful that it led me to where I am today, but just challenging myself, staying away from things that were the so-called norm of my neighborhood that I could have went down that road with. But surrounding myself was the biggest thing, surrounding myself by positive people. I had a small circle that I kept the same circle still to this day. My circle doesn't increase. And that's the thing. You find the ones that truly care about you and not who you are or what you do, but care about you as a person, and you ride with those things. And if you feel anything that the ground is kind of shaky about that person may put you in the wrong situation, then that shouldn't probably be your friend. And that's how I lived it. I try to stay away from the people who was going to make my road really rocky, and stay with the people who made my road pretty, straight and narrow.
So I can really relate to that because, I think a lot of young people in school don't understand the importance of the people you surround yourself with. And I'm always telling young people that if it's 10 people in a group, surround yourself with 5 people that are equal to you or doing better than you. So if you're around 5, 10 people and 6 of them in your group are all F students, eventually that's going to make you become an F student. Because you become you become a creature of habit. So Miles, when you talk about the importance, especially being a young kid like yourself, coming straight from basically high school, you played 1 year at Texas. How important was it for you to stay level-headed and grounded and understand how important it was to have people in your circle? Because I see your family, your mom and dad, and your circle that I've seen since you were a rookie with the Indiana Pacers to where you are now. How important is that for you to surround yourself with people that are on a positive track to keep you focused?
Yeah, man. First of all, I want to give a shout out to all you student athletes here, man. This whole COVID nonsense is unbelievable. I don't know how you guys are going through this with all the protocols and still be able to stay on your books and be able to go out there. So huge shout out to y'all. But back to your question, Amp. Yeah, man, I have a very tight-knit family. And one thing that really helped me out is, as much as you don't want to believe it, especially when you're in high school, man, your parents, your mom, your dad, their antennas are always up. And they're always able to sense, like, who's really for you, who isn't for you, and whatnot. And, when I was younger, I had a lot of guys that, I was really cool with. I was going to be friends for life. It's my boy. When you get to the league and things kind of start to change. Even when you get to college, things start to change. So, when you have those people who I call leeches who are in your circle, who are around you, do nothing but, suck the energy out of you and bring you down. So it's very important to distance yourself from those people early. You're not going to recognize it right away, but, take some time to, look from afar, look from a different perspective and look at the people around you. For someone like me, I came to the league at 19 years old, so I had to mature very quickly. I didn't have time to deal with those people, that I thought were going to be my friends. I didn't have time to deal with those people that were around me because I had bigger fish to fry. G Hill can tell you, he was my vet, my first year coming into the league. Once you come in, like it's a very quick maturity process, especially when you start playing early. So if I would have had any mishaps or started following the crowds that I could have potentially, fell in with, and I wouldn't be where I'm at today. My upbringing isn't necessarily the same as G Hill's or a lot of y'all's, but man, my antenna's always up, and I advise y'all to always keep y'all's antennas up the same.
So that's really important, and I want to bring in Jacoby Brissett into this next question, because what Jacoby, ever since he's been here, coming from New England Patriots and coming to the Indianapolis Colts as a young cat and basically thrown into the fire, the one thing that I quickly learned about Jacoby was Jacoby is somebody who is a change agent. Jacoby is somebody that I learned out the gate was civically engaged and making a difference and using his platform to make a difference. We talked about this just a couple of days ago about what are you willing to sacrifice for the greater good of the people that are around you. So, I'm gonna ask Jacoby a question that I think it talks about what we just went through, and I want to talk about something pertaining to like John Lewis. So for Jacoby, John Lewis had a statement, a phrase called good trouble. What do you see warranted for you to bring attention via your platform that typically gets negative backlash based on the things that you were doing? Like, you really went and put yourself out there about the movement. You really put yourself out there when you got your entire team to register to vote. You really got players behind you that wasn't civically engaged, that didn't understand what it meant. And you even told this to me about having a serious conversation with upper management that this is who I am. What is it about of John Lewis in this climate that makes you understand, yes, I'm a professional athlete, but I'm also a Black man who happens to live in a life that is under scrutiny every day. So for you to step out there and at the position that you play as quarterback, how important was that for you?
Yeah, appreciate the intro, and you always work with that. And appreciate everybody on this call, and thanks for letting me be a part of this. To that point is you kind of answered the question before I could. Before I was a professional athlete, I was a Black man, and after I'm a professional athlete, I'm gonna be a Black man. And that is what drove me. Because I knew I have and I will spend more time without the what would you say the benefits of being a professional athlete right now. And it's my job and I think it's everybody on this call's job is to understand that the same benefits we are rewarded now aren't going to last forever. Things get taken away from us in the snap of a finger, which we all know. And at any level, you can be professional, high school. To be on this call is a privilege, because you're hearing the perspective that a lot of kids, a lot of people in our neighborhoods won't be able to to understand or know or really be able to hear if they're not on this call. So having the conversations when Miles kind of talked about George being one of his OGs when he first got in the league, and I've had several OGs in my my career so far. I mean, even Rob's on this call, and I've talked to Rob a couple of times, and honestly, Rob, was the one that got me to read a book this off season. So I ain't finished it yet, Rob, but I'm almost there. But you have those conversations with people, and you realize the bigger picture of a quote unquote professional athlete. It's about living out your dream, and you want to make the money, you want to do all those things, but what is the sole purpose? And when I looked, and I had to ask myself that question, because so often athletes fall into this trap of like, man, like the old saying, it's like, yeah, you didn't do all this stuff to make it out of the hood, to forget the hood. But it's not a sense that, it's more so I made it this far, now let me see who else I can bring. It may not have to be in a professional football or basketball or baseball or whatever aspect it is, but how can I help bring this person to light of the things that are against us, are around us, and trying to tear us down, and how can we, overcome that? And and the conversations like this is what sparks those changes. And I'm sure I'll hear someone on this call that I like, dang, that really stuck with me. So every time I get a chance to be a part of conversations like this, I really jump on them, because I know it's somebody that's living a different, not a different life, the same life, but through a different lens that that I can attach to and learn from.
So with that, you're talking about your OG Rob, and I think that's important for a lot of young people on here to understand how important it is to listen to mentors, how important it is to listen to your coaches, listen to your teachers, listen to your mom and dad, because a lot of times you think as a high school student that you've made it because you got 25 letters from 25 different colleges. But that really means absolutely nothing. Again, if your education, your grades are not there, you're not going to have a chance to become the next Jacoby Brissett. This man, Robert Mathis, went to a HBCU. And when you talk about defying the odds and understanding how to fight through adversity, we always joke, because when Rob first came into the league, he was such this quiet guy. And, he's running around with like a Edgerrin James and a Reggie Wayne and a Dwight Freeney and all of these guys. But the one thing that I loved about Rob, and I think a lot of you student athletes, you take this for granted, and that is the person that's older than you is just that, one day older than you. And 9 times out of 10, that person has a little bit more wisdom than you do. That's why you have coaches. That's why you have athletic directors. That's why you have counselors in school, to prepare you for life after high school. But when you, and if you're not built for this, which a lot of high school kids, y'all think that because you can score 20 points on a basketball court, or you average 150 yards, or you average 10 tackles a game, whatever that position you play, there is more to life than just that position. Robert Mathis was somebody that was undersized, somebody that was told that you wasn't big enough, you wasn't heavy enough, you didn't go to a big enough school to be where you are. And now again, he leads the Indianapolis Colts in sacks and on a 14-year career, and probably could have played a little bit longer, but this man literally had 10 surgeries. Now, I don't know how many of you high school kids are willing to go through this. This is what's determination. This is what's called drive, that not just as a pro, but just as a human being in life, looking to better your life. Robert Mathis, I need you to explain to kids how you prioritize being an athlete versus being a grown man, that the grown man had to make decisions that impacted the athlete.
First off, y'all, appreciate you guys for having me on here. So I'm always willing to, pass the torch, pay it forward. But I think the main thing is identifying your end goal from the beginning. What do I mean by that? Is what do you want to be? When it's all said and done, what legacy do you want to leave? What do you want to be when you grow up or whatnot? And once you can identify, pinpoint that, what goes into being that? So his question is, being a grown man is responsibilities across the board. Sports is that's one individual responsibility, things that's attached to that. But a grown man is on field, off field, taking care of yourself, your body, the people around you, the people that's helped you get to where you are, the people that's not beneficial to your circle, and if they're not beneficial to your circle, get them out your circle. It's just things like that, just being aware of the mental, because ultimately as a professional athlete, everybody was that guy in high school, college, but now you're amongst the elite. So what is going to separate you to give you longevity in your career? And that's your mental, the mental edge. The earlier you get that mental edge, the longer your career lasts and the more productive you become. So it's one of those, I knew I wasn't the biggest, fastest, or the strongest, but I knew what I wanted to do. And that's to go out on my own terms, play as long as I wanted to play, And I had to identify what went into that. And once I did that, I went after that.
Thanks, Rob. George, speaking of mental, during the pandemic, during the George Floyd movement first, then come the pandemic. How has the pandemic impacted your choices and shifted, if any, your perspective on and off life? You're muted, nephew. There you go.
There we go. I think it impacted me a lot. And we've had these conversations probably every week. And I call you sometime late at night just to try to pick your brain. But it impacted me a lot because in those situations, like Jacoby just mentioned, as professional athletes, we are considered the heroes, the superheroes and things like that, the mentors and the role models. But once you take these capes off, these jerseys off, we're just another black man in America. And it really didn't sink into me until all this stuff happened, where we can literally watch a man have his knee on someone's neck for multiple minutes. And a lot of the world still thought it was fine that this cop did his job, which was furious for me. But it just impacted me in a different form, that this can still go on, and the world as a whole didn't think it was wrong. So then I told myself that black man could have been me on 34th and Keystone. That black man could have been me when I got pulled over by the cops in my neighborhood and got guns drawn on me when I was just visiting my grandparents. That young black man could have been me when I'm going to a nice bar with my friends or out to dinner with my wife and my kids. Like, that can be me. And no one cares about, like I said, this cape and stuff we have on once we're outside of our job. We're just another black man in America. So that sit well on me. And I think that is what determined what I was standing for from here on out. I was going to stand, I was going to use my voice, I was going to use my platform to speak on what I believe in. And the consequences that come with that, I was willing to take that. I got traded this summer so far, but I really honestly think me standing for what I believe in was a little bit of factor of why I got traded. But I went into this already knowing that could be a possibility. So I was fine with that. If you told me a long time ago, since I was a rookie, save your money. Save your money. And I told you, man, I'm going to save as much as I can because I never had it. But I've saved enough where if I wasn't to play basketball today, I'm fine. As a man, I'm fine. I have enough to take care of my wife, my kids, my family, and live the same lifestyle I've been living. Not a luxurious lifestyle, but a lifestyle that's comfortable for me. And I think that's what changed me. It made me realize that life is much bigger than this sport that we're playing. Life is much bigger than this lifestyle we're trying to portray to be. Like Jacoby said, we are black men in America. And until we figure that out and start to hold each other accountable, first on black crime, because that's one of the biggest things that we have to hold each other accountable for, to get respect from someone else, we have to start learning how to respect each other. And that's what I kind of try to teach our AAU kids today, is having respect for each other to get respect from others.
That's big, George. And I'm going to jump back to Jacoby on the follow-up on that, because Jacoby and I had the same kind of conversation about sacrificing and understanding priorities. And I've had the ability to talk to the president of the Indiana Pacers, the president of the Indianapolis Colts, and telling them that this is the moment, whether if you're a high school kid, you're a Pop Warner kid, at the end of the day, there's more to the student athlete than the name that's on the front of their jersey. The most important name is the name that's on the back of your jersey. And as student athletes, a lot of times you don't understand that your actions, your conduct, your disrespect on the court, off the court, does not just impact you. It impacts everybody that's affiliated with you. That could be your grandmother, your cousin, your brother, your sister. So it's really important for student athletes to understand, in order for you to get respect from somebody else, you got to learn to respect yourself first. Jacoby did something that I thought was really commendable. You know, I talked about him doing his civic duty, getting players to register to vote. But I didn't talk about the fact that Jacoby was willing to do similar to George, and that's just lay it on the line, because Jacoby made a comment to me and he said, man, what's the worst thing can happen to me? I can be cut. I'm financially stable. At the point of what I'm talking about now, I'm fighting for my forefathers. I'm fighting for the people that laid it on the line. And I go back to young people that are listening. The importance of listening to your coaches, the importance of listening to the mentors that you have, the elders around you. That could be the most important part of your career. So Jacoby, when you decided to really jump out here and take control of your locker room and say, I'm willing to lose it all, what made you take that stance?
Before I answer that question, I want people on the call to understand what reference to what I said and what George was saying. It wasn't that we're saying get the money first and then that's when you remember. It's the two can work into the same. And I'm actually reading a book right now. It's called $40 Million Slaves, and it's talking about how how they say that, quote unquote, the new black athlete has forgotten about where they came from because of financial reasons. That's not what we're saying. It's saying that we can do both at the same time and not how do I say it? And they don't have to be optional. Which one is the choice? So to Am's point about the sacrifice, it kind of played into that. Is like George Hill said, is you see those things. You see the George Floyd incident, but you see Trayvon Martin incident. You see, it's so many incidents that you see, and it's just like, damn, that could be me. And it brings you back to what the reality really is, not what we go to we drive to the game, we play in the game, we go home, we eat nice dinner, and those things is more so, damn, like my brother is living like that, and my brother is not in the NFL. My sister is living like that, and she's not, she's not in the WNBA. She doesn't have the like I said, those benefits that I do. So it was like, damn, how do I speak up for one, my small circle of family that can't live the way I live because of other circumstances, and then is to my community, which is the Black community. So then it was like, man, like you can have all of this money and it still doesn't amount to the respect and the love and the genuineness of your people. I mean, just think about, the things that LeBron James has done. Everybody, no disrespect to Miles and George, but everybody has this respect for LeBron James and what he's done for the community and what he does on the court and everything. And when he took a stand, I'm sure, I don't excuse my language, but people wrote on his house, nigger. And it's just like, this is one of the most powerful basketball players to ever play the game. And when you see that, no matter how much money, how much you do for somebody, that they'll always think of you as what they were born to think of you as, it made me realize, no matter what, at the end of the day, like, I'm fine with those people thinking of me that way, but long as the people that I know that I genuinely care about understand that, like, I have a bigger, they understand that my bigger purpose is still into play. That's what kind of made me, step out and really, I know I kind of went on a little tangent right there, but yeah, that's what made me say something.
No, but it's okay, because that's, what this Making the Right Play Real Talk forum is about is us being real. And that's the one thing that I tell people all the time. I know a lot of professional athletes, but the ones that I interact with and deal with are real ones. They're real people. It's not necessarily about being the biggest player out there, but what you just described, Jacoby, goes back to when you talked about LeBron James, you, George, Robert, Miles, you guys all are agents of change. And that's what young people got to understand when they're in school. What do you stand for? Do you think your life is just about you being an athlete? Do you think your life is about how many girls you got in your life? Or do you have a purpose to be civically engaged and be able to sacrifice? You're talking about professional athletes that are willing to sacrifice it all. And you're a student athlete who in high school, those kind of things, people, that goes on your college transcript when they see that you're part of civic organizations in school, you're volunteering in school, you're volunteering in your neighborhood, you're helping kids, whether it's handicapped kids. It takes a little bit more than just being a student athlete to be successful in life. But with everything that we're dealing with in this climate today, one thing that stands out to me, whether if you're a professional athlete, if you are a garbage man, if you're a student athlete, being a Black person in this climate, Miles, we all have to deal with the mental side of this. How important, Miles, is it to, one, understand to love yourself? Because if you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else. Understand that. But then also understanding the mental health aspect of being able to have that part of your life down, to be able to go from playing in a bubble, going to the bubble, just as from an athlete perspective, going to the bubble, coming out of the bubble with all the stress that we're dealing with as Black people. The importance of the mental health is where, Miles, in your priority of life.
Yeah, man. So that's actually a great point. I mean, you guys are lucky, man. Now more than ever, mental health is like the forefront of what everybody's talking about. Close this door. Oh, yeah. So now more than ever, mental health is what's being talked about all over the place. So you have outlets, you have people you can talk to, you have, counselors at your school that can help you with those kind of things. Because, just keeping it real, when you come from, Black communities or Black household, people basically shit on you about, your mental health and all that kind of stuff. You talk about it, they call you weak or call you soft or other things, for lack of better words. But I think for me personally, when I first got to the league, you kind of ride the high of being a rookie, and my second year was good, and it was like a little bit of a fall up and down. People talk, no matter what you do, people are going to have an opinion, whether it's your coaches, whether it's your people in your community, scouts, anybody. Everybody's always going to have an opinion, but your opinion yourself is what matters the most. You got to always keep it real with yourself. If there's certain things that you aren't carrying yourselves up to certain standards, you got to put yourself in check. I think one thing that was really good for me and my mental was I started doing yoga like 3 years ago. I kind of messed around with it a little bit back in high school and just for fun, being around girls and all kind of stuff. But then I started taking it real seriously, and it really kind of helped me, just kind of find, I guess, my center is the best way I can describe it. After like a long game, you can have a good game, you have a bad game, it doesn't matter. You can come home and just give yourself, start out with 2 minutes, but give yourself 5 to 10 minutes to self-reflection and meditation. Like, I promise you, it'll take you a long way. And I mean, people are going to laugh at you. People are going to call you oddball. People are going to call you weird. But that's just also part of it. You can't let that kind of stuff affect you, because that stuff affects your mental and affects your play. I like to say that basketball, in my opinion, is 90% mental. I think it's 10% skill and 5% luck. It's not just you playing the sport the right way. You're not giving 100, you're giving more than 100%. But that's how I think. But as a whole, ladies and gentlemen, just like, if you don't have your mental stability, and there's a lot of different steps to the mental, part of it is just knowing where you want to go, kind of like where what Rob was saying, like having your end goal. Part of it is knowing where you're at now and knowing where you came from. You got to be able to put all that kind of stuff into perspective to help you get to where you want to be. And you never forget where you come from, because then you'll forget where you're going. That's what my mother likes to say. So keeping your mental strong is a big part of the game. A lot of people are going to tell you that it's not. And a lot of people are going to tell you that it's BS. It's this and that. But just know that, in any shape, form, or fashion, all professional athletes find a way to find our center.
And you got to have that. You got to have a center. I mean, when I go back to Robert Mathis, when he first came to the Indianapolis Colts, he came in with an underdog mentality. And, 15, 17 years later, I still see Rob, and he still carries that chip on his shoulder. Rob, explain to me, as we stay on this mental health side of it, what was it about you that mentally you were able to stay into it and use that side of it where you were telling yourself, you always told yourself you could, but then there was always this doubt about, no, you're too little, you're not fast enough. All of these things that a lot of these young athletes that are on this Zoom call right now are probably being told, but they don't understand the psyche of it and how important it is. So mentally, Rob, to get to a point, and I'm not just talking about as a professional athlete, I'm talking about in life, because you have to apply, which is why this forum is called Making the Right Play in Life, because as athletes, as professionals, if you run your own business, you're going to have days where you feel defeated and mentally you want to quit. Rob, what prevented you from quitting?
Well, I think, me personally, whatever chip I had to put on my shoulder, I made sure it stayed there. Especially, coming from, we all, rest assured, I assume that every high school male and female on here come from humble beginnings. So nobody has the best of anything. So naturally, you want the best of everything once you achieve your goal. So with that, I always felt that I could do it, but it was always because of my circumstances, things that I couldn't control, whether it's where I'm from, my height, weight, size, family, things like that. That determines how far I can go, and I wasn't trying to accept that. You can't tell me because of my circumstances this is my ceiling. I just never accepted it. And that kind of just formulated into one big, huge chip on my shoulder. And I used that for my game. I didn't use it as an excuse because that's the easy route. They tell you, well, I come from, the hood and A, B, and C. So I'm going to act like I come from the hood, A, B, and C, and I'm just going to get to a certain place, and then I'm going to bottom out. The people that come from those humble beginnings that won't accept being placed in a box, those are the guys that have the greatest story to tell. You got, George. Shit, prime example, George Hill, man. I remember coming to Indiana my rookie year and just kind of riding around, learning the city. And I know the 38th Street and, Keystone kept that little area. So I know that it was a little rough, man. This kind of remind me of back home, Zone 6. So I know his story is real. What he says is real. And he didn't let that keep him down because he had an end goal in mind and he attacked it like a maniac. So that's the main thing. Young people, if you can learn by watching others' mistakes and not making those same mistakes, you're going to get that much further in life. Because if you watch somebody make a mistake and later in life you make the same mistake knowing that you shouldn't have made it, it could be catastrophic for you. It may not have been for that person that set the example for you, but they laid the groundwork to show you what not to do. So that makes sure your success that much sweeter and that much your learning curve that much sharper.
And when you talk about success, Rob, I've always told myself there are steps to success, and I like to kind of implement them with things that I do. And there's 5 things that I like to put down, and I tell myself I got to come up with an idea. And once I come up with an idea, I got to follow that idea with a plan. After that plan, I got to put that plan into action. And then once I put those plans into actions, I got to have good study habits. I got to have habits that, even if it's the people that are around me, I got to have habits, because what Rob just talked about, wisdom comes from failing. It doesn't come from succeeding, because if you win at everything, you don't know how to lose. And then when you do lose, you quit. So I have to understand the adjustment. And then I also have to be prepared for the transformation from all of those steps that I just went through. George, when you think about your life, things will happen to you, and things did happen to you. and things will happen around you. What happens inside of you is all that matters. What was that fire that was in you that, you were told when you came out of Broad Ripple High School? I think you were leading the state in scoring or something. But then why did you pick IUPUI? You could have went anywhere in the country. What was it that you picked IUPUI and in the end, it paid off for you? Because not only did you go to IUPUI, you went back to school, got your degree, which I'm so proud of you for that. And then you become a first-round draft pick with the San Antonio Spurs. 12 years later, again, you're living your best life.
Like you said, I think it was the chip on my shoulder. Coming out of Broad Ripple, I didn't do very good my freshman and sophomore year, basketball or academically. And I started to question myself, is basketball for me? Should I go back and continue to play football, which was my first love? Seeing guys like Robert Mathis made me really change my mind about football. It's hard like that on the basketball court. But I think the main reason I chose IUPUI is because I knew I had Florida. I took a visit to Florida Gators. I took a visit to USC, all those places. But none of those schools was there in the beginning. IUPUI was a school that was there in the beginning. We had a coach named Joseph Price. You know who he is, Harris. Was an African-American male that played in Germany with Dirk Nowitzki a couple years. Ended up coaching at Manual High School, another IPS public school that was kind of not our rivals, but in the public school section. And he ended up getting an assistant job at IUPUI. My freshman year, this guy would come to my school and say I was going to be good. Sophomore year, this guy would come to my games and tell me I'm going to be good. And I didn't want to hear it because I sucked. I'm like, bro, this dude is tripping. Come back my junior year, and I led the state in scoring my junior year. And he was like, I told you so, I told you so. School started piling in. The boxes started to get bigger. Every school in America started to pay attention because I started to average crazy numbers. Came back my senior year, this guy is still there, Joseph Price. Like, I told you you're going to be good, man. I would love for you to be my first recruit as a Black man coming from public school to this college. I'm like, what college is this? Didn't know about IUPUI whatsoever, even though it was down the street from my neighborhood. Went to Florida, and I seen the ratio. And this is where we're being 100% honest with each other. I seen the ratio of girls to guys. It was 9-1. And the ratio of girls to guys was totally different than what I see day to day at Indianapolis, Indiana on 34th and Keystone. Just the quality of it was ridiculous. And I told myself, I cannot do this mentally because I already knew. Being from where I came from to go there with my parents wasn't going to be there. I didn't have that person over my shoulder telling me right from wrong. I didn't think mentally I was ready for that. Was going to think about going to IU. I didn't want to go there because my cousin Robert Vaden at the time was going there. Then they had the AJ Ratliff and all the other guys that went there, DJ White. And I wanted to go to a place where I can fulfill who I want to be as a player and as a man. I wanted to play multiple positions. I wanted to start something that was pretty much from the ground and kind of build it to make it my own. So I chose IUPUI, wanted to stay close to the family. And then, like you said, I was getting so many disses to myself, people writing stories of how I sucked for going to this school. I would never make it out of this school. How can you average 38 points a game and you choose a school like IUPUI? And like Robert said, that just started to just build a big old Dorito on my shoulder. I'm like, okay, well, people think I couldn't do this, just like people didn't think I can lead the state in scoring coming from IPS. Didn't get Mr. Basketball at all. I wasn't even in top 5 for Mr. Basketball because I was a public school African-American kid. They didn't care about that. So that chip just started to grow bigger and bigger and bigger. And so when I got to IUPUI, I'm like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. I played open gym as many times as I could every day. I worked out as much as I can every day. I became addicted to the grind. And people always say, like, just because you go in the gym for 45 to an hour, you think you're getting a good sweat, there's still work to be done. And I didn't want no one to outwork me. That's how I had that chip on my shoulder. I just wanted to be the best I could. So like I used to always go play with adults and things like that. Amp Ice always used to invite me to open gyms that we used to have back in the city and things like that. I would come straight from my practice at IPY to come play open gym with you guys just because I wanted that grind. I was addicted to it. And that's how I lived my life. I just had that chip on my shoulder that everyone's going to think that I'm going to fail, and I can't be that failing, role model for people. I wanted to be that positive role model that, man, we can't make it from here. Yes, you can. We can't do it because we come from IPS. No, yes, you can. I'm a living witness of, I come from the dirt. I went to IPS, where everyone thought it was the worst schools ever in the city. So I wanted to prove them wrong, that it wasn't, that we are human, that we do have athletes and we are good people. And then I wanted to prove everybody wrong, that me going to IUPUI being a small school, that anything is possible if you dedicate yourself to the grind. And I'm sure Robert can do the same thing. Coming from the HBCU, everyone probably told him, you're not going to make it coming from here. But that grind, you just start to get addicted to it. And then once you get that little success, that grind becomes more, because now you've tasted success and like, okay, well, if I ramp up my workouts more, how much more success can I get? And that's how I lived life. I just wanted to see that success come in from the grind that I've done.
That's important, because it sounds like to me you've learned like the self-image of self-love and blocking out all of the noise from other people, to understanding that you control your own destiny. Miles Turner, when you think about, sacrifices that you have to make, and what George just described to me is, again, somebody civically who made a sacrifice for the people around him, because he could have went to Florida and didn't stay home and show people from his neighborhood that you too can make it. And that's the part, again, when we talk about being a leader, advocating on behalf of others through your actions, how important it is. Coming from Texas, Miles, where Texas is a huge football state, what was it like for you to have to make yourself seen? I mean, physically you're 6'11", so that's not difficult. But as a football state, how difficult was it for you to stand out? And what were the habits that you implemented as a young high school kid? Because again, out of all the ones that are on the call, you were the youngest, basically coming in at 19. What did you have to go through? What was in your head? Like, I had my little five steps to success. What were yours?
Yeah, that's a good question, Am. So, full disclosure, for me, I didn't have the same upbringing as, George or Rob did. I come from a very affluent neighborhood, a white neighborhood. And, subsequently so, a lot comes with that, as you start speaking well, for being a black man, when you start carrying yourself in a professional manner, when you go to start hooping, like all that shit goes out the window. Everybody looks at you like, oh, he's soft, or oh, he's from here, he's from there. Thankfully for me, like I was able to get the best of both worlds. And I was raised, in the neighborhood I was raised in, but I always played in the hood. I always played with, people who didn't care where I was from, in a sense. And they humbled me a lot. So that was like big for me. And back to the sacrifices, I think I made all my sacrifices early. I didn't have a social life. When I was coming up, I played for 4 or 5 different, from 8th grade to like really like my junior year of high school. I played for like 4 or 5 different teams at one time. My father was the one who was really obsessed with basketball, who was obsessed with the grind, and I didn't really fall in love with it until I started doing the grind. I saw what I could become one day, in a sense. So my sacrifices were, I never, outside of, maybe my couple friends that came to the house, I was never at the mall, never went to no parties, then was barely able to convince my parents to let me go to prom, like this little stuff like that. It's just it's funny looking back at it, because you're not missing much whatsoever. At the time, it feels like it's like the hottest thing. I feel like all the girls are gonna be there. I feel like all the popular kids, yada yada yada. Like, you really ain't missing nothing. because I guarantee you all the same dudes at that party still trying to hang on to them days and the glory days in high school. So that was a part of my sacrifice. I think another part of my sacrifice too was just, man, my parents, bro, they put everything they had into my basketball. Like, I'm talking just like all their paychecks. Like we drove to every single tournament, like Texas to Florida, Texas to Minnesota, Texas to Vegas, Texas to Cali. It's like they really were the ones that pushed me. And I was lucky to have a 2-parent household and have those people behind me. So, you know, in the back of my head, I was like, man, they don't put everything into this. I got to find a way to repay them. So that was a big, like, driving force for me. And, you know, coming from a football state, you know, it's funny, like, but the high school I went to was actually every year I was there, they were a top 5 team in the state. And they were playing on ESPN. They were playing, you know, international schools. It was Euless Trinity High School. It was a huge football school. They won back-to-back championships. I mean, it was in 5A, the biggest division in Texas, yada, yada. Like, my school hadn't been to the playoffs since, like, 2007. I graduated 2014. My school ain't been to the playoffs since 2007. They ain't been to the state finals since, like, the 80s, like, none of that stuff. So it was different for me. You know, I could have very easily transferred to a prep school, could have very easily transferred to you know, like a Huntington Prep, you know, stuff like that. Or you might have heard of Oak Hill, like some of those big basketball schools. Man, I decided to stay there and try to bring some notoriety on the basketball side of things. So it was definitely tough from the neighborhood I was in, because we don't get a lot of, you know, like coaches that come out there. But, you know, if you have the talent, they'll come out there and find you. So I just think that I was blessed and fortunate enough to have, you know, the people around me be put in the position I was in to carry myself, you know, in a professional manner, but also have the side of me that, you know, doesn't fuck around on the court. So that was one thing that was really easy for me. And I mean, as you'll see, I'm very open-ended. I'm very raw. I'm sorry if y'all are sensitive.
All right. Oh, no.
I'm just open-ended. But
no, I mean, that's how we communicate. That's what this is. You know, the whole thing about this is people being comfortable being uncomfortable. A lot of times our young brothers and sisters coming from the inner city, they're so afraid to be just humble. They're afraid of what the peer pressure of what other people would think about them. They're afraid to ask questions in forums like this. And that's why this is so important. So I love the fact that you're always who you are. And, you know, Robert Mathis, when we talk about no social life, when we talk about sacrifices, like these young brothers that's on this call right now, they probably don't understand what it really means to put phones aside, to put girls aside, to make those sacrifices in life. Because no matter where you go from high school to college, a lot of you young men on this call, 99.9% of you guys are not going to go pro. That is just the statistics are not in your favor. When you think about that, then you also think about you will go pro, but you'll go pro at something other than being a professional athlete. Robert, right now as a mentor, because you've retired, you're going into the Indianapolis Coach Ring of Honor, which means only the elite of the elite gets to go there. That's because of all the hard work, all the sacrifices you made. And, you know, you used to not even go to clubs when you were a young boy coming out. When he was Rob go in the club and go sit in the corner. But I understood that his focus wasn't about club life. For all the young men on here, and Miles just talked about it, how important is it for you as a mentor now when you are training young young football players with the gridiron game? The mental side of what you teach is just as important as the physical side, but also telling these young men how important it is to sacrifice eating wrong, staying out all night, not listening to your coaches, not listening to the people that are trying to instill in you. Because unlike Miles, a lot of kids don't come from male and female parent homes. A lot of them come from just female parent homes. How important is it for you to explain to the young men that you train every day that you have to listen to guidance and direction and you have to be willing to make sacrifices.
It's extremely important because the reason I harp on the mental, like also off the field type of deals, because they're in high school, so they're really just now jumping off the porch. What I mean by that is that they don't really know the grind yet. Most people see, okay, NFL guys, you see Sunday, you see clubs, and you see, the bells and whistles. When they see NBA guys, they see the game, the Christmas Day games, the All-Star games, all the bells and whistles, but you don't see the grind. George and Miles just spoke on the grind part, and people don't understand that is what makes you you. Marvin Harrison said it best. I get paid for Monday through Saturday. The games are for free. And that's what he meant.
Wait a minute, Rob. Stop. I'm going to stop you. Say that part again, because, again, these young men that's on this Zoom call right now think the most important day is Friday night if they're playing football, Wednesday and Friday if they're playing basketball. So please stress that again, because I've heard Marv say that.
Yeah, Marv said it, and I didn't pick up on it till like my 4th, 5th season because, Marvin Harrison would never take a practice off. He would every practice, and that's where Reggie learned that from, and that's what I learned from Reggie, and it's just a domino effect and on down. But he said, Monday through Saturday is for free. I mean, Monday through Saturday is what I get paid for. Sunday is for free because that's when the lights come on. That's when it's time to shine, and just the car that you've been polishing all week, it's time to drive it now, type of deal. And when people speak on the grind, that's exactly what it is. It's the grind. Your body's gonna hurt. You have to fight mentally to outdo what you did yesterday, and also to know that I speak on NFL that the second you walk through the doors. The second I walked through the doors of the Indianapolis Colts was this very second they tried to replace me by someone younger and cheaper. That's a fact of life. In professional sports, they're going to try to, in life, they're going to try to replace you by someone younger and cheaper. And I'm the first one that, on record, I'm the first one to say I would rather my kids excel in something other than sports. Because, I know what comes up. My body still hurts. I've been retired for a few years now. So I would much rather they be the next Barack Obama, doctor, lawyer, something like that. They can excel using their mental, but it's their choice. If you choose sports, you got to do it the right way, and you have to follow the right plan. And we just weed out the wrong people. And a lot of this stuff is easier said than done, but the guys on this panel has done it, so you can do it too.
And that's really important. Understanding how important it is to apply what Robert just talked about. And that's not always focusing in on the shiny object, which is when is the game. It really matters when you are in practice, when your coaches are trying to get you to understand every game is going to be different. Every team is going to scout you different. That's how life is, Monday through Friday. This Zoom call is making the right play in life. And we're talking about social justice, but we're also tying in day-to-day life when you talk about professional athletes and the journey that they go through in day-to-day life, just like your coaches, just like your counselors, just like your parents. As parents, George, we have to teach our kids to practice great habits, discipline, consistency, how to be successful, understanding how to fail. And because, George, you've been at the spectrum of both ends of it, you're now in a place where as a young Black man, you're looking at life as implementing agent of change to show young athletes that are coming up behind you. Why is it so important for you to take George Hill platform as you prepare for life after the NBA? Why is it so important when I look at your farm and I look at what you're building, your legacy? that if I showed people literally this, I don't even know, 300-acre property that you own with camels and bulls and all kind of stuff on it, when did you prepare yourself for life like that?
I prepared myself for life like that. So my junior year in college, I broke my foot. I came up and did open gym with you when I wasn't supposed to, remember? But broke my junior year, and I didn't think like, man, maybe basketball isn't for me. School became more serious mentally for me because I thought basketball was not going to be the same. So when I got drafted and the contract came in, I had a great veteran in Tim Duncan. And what was alarming to me is if you ever looked at Tim Duncan, the way he dressed, the way he carried himself, he never changed. He wore super baggy, crazy looking pants, shirts all dingy and floppy and crazy. Like he used to still wear lug boots. Where that he just didn't care about anything else. And you're looking at a guy like, man, he makes $25 million a year. When no one was making that type of money then, you're like, he's living like this. And I remember one day I asked him, I said, why do you live so cheap when you're so rich? And he told me, he said, I live so cheap and I'm so rich because I never was rich. I always lived this life before I was rich. So why change? And I said, because you have all the money too. He said, well, basketball is only going to last so long. Do you want to live the lavish lifestyle longer or shorter? And I was like, well, of course, longer. He said, well, if you want to live it longer, you need to save more early and spend more later. He said, because when you spend more later, you're only spending the stuff that you made off of what you saved earlier.
Wow.
And that's what popped in my head, like, man, like, okay, well, I'm going to start saving. So I never bought any watches like jewelry. I never bought the Lamborghinis and the Ferraris, the Maybachs. I don't own one of those to this day. I grew up in inner city, then I grew up in the hood, and I came out here and experienced something totally different in Texas, which was ranch life. And I told myself, like, when I save and I have 3 or 4 contracts underneath my belt, I want to use the money that I've made off of the money, which is your interest money. I didn't want to touch the principal. I'm going to try to use the interest money that wasn't really my money, but it made money off the money that I saved to buy me a ranch, because I knew God is going to always have more people in this world. It's naturally. He gives life. He gives life to people.
You got a rich dad.
He's gonna build more land. I mean, more houses and things like that. But what he's not going to do is build more land. Like, there's not going to be something that comes up in life and says, hey, this is a new piece of land. It just came out the ocean. It's not going to happen. So I bought land because land is always something that you can pass down to your kids for generational wealth. And I started to look at that. I went on a hunting trip in Utah at this Mormon ranch, and I did an elk hunt out there, and I met the owner of the ranch, and I wondered, like, how did he get all this land? And I have 900 acres, and this guy had 47,000 on one plot and then 150,000 on another plot. So he had all close to 200,000 acres. And I wondered, like, how did you get all this? And he simply said, my great-great-grandfather bought this in the 50s. And he paid $50,000 or something for it. And today it's worth $375 million. But it was passed down to him. And I said, dang, generational wealth is a bitch.
Wow.
Like, how do I get that? So I bought land and I put it in a trust, and I said, my kids will never be able to sell this. This is going to be something that they pass down from their kids to their kids' kids and just keep it going. And that's how I start generational wealth.
Wow. So that's really important. And that's something that we don't teach we're not taught as a race in general. What I want to do now is I want to allow people a chance to go to the chat area and ask questions. And we're going to take some questions for the guys before we get out of here. It's the Making the Right Play in Life forum that we're doing, and it's sponsored by Indiana Black Expo and the Lilly Foundation. I want to shout out some of the people that took the time, because when we did this, and this is really hard and something that I wanted to do. Shout out my man Mosi Barnes on here, Victor Bush. I want to shout out who else is on here? That Lomax is on here, who came in with his kids. This is something that I wanted to do, and I think it's necessary. Some coaches committed to be on here, and it really kind of like shook me to my core, because for these men to take the time out to want to be a part of this and share their voice. Dr. Lars Rasko, what's up, Boys to Men, man? You're always out there doing great work for the community with young Black men, young men in general. But these brothers took the time out to really want to share, because we need this. Our young brothers need to see hope. They need to hear real life stories. They need to understand that there's more to life than just trying to be a professional athlete. And there are a lot of people who think that if I don't become that, then I'm not a success. And that's not true. You know, the mere fact that you have people that are willing to step up and share their truth, to be transparent with you. This is information that is supposed to inspire you if you let it, to teach you to understand that to whom much is given, much is required. All of these brothers that's on this Zoom that are speaking are really giving back of their time. Not just, I'm not talking about in this Zoom call. I'm talking about all the work that they did using their platforms. George talked about him being an agent of change, him being civically engaged, him walking around Milwaukee, Wisconsin, knocking on doors, getting people to vote in this election. This is a professional athlete. You know, these are guys that are laying it on the line, but they're willing to give back to young men, because when they were coming up, George had me. I was always there in George's ear. I told George when he was going to get drafted, I told him the San Antonio Spurs was going to draft him, because you're looking at a young brother who come from 30th in college, 30th in Broadway, who I use my privilege to be able to touch other young men like me, because I come from that. But what I also understand is I was also taught how to be civically engaged in my community. It wasn't just about sports. It wasn't about me working with some of the biggest athletes in the world, some of the biggest entertainers in the world. It's about me being able to take what I have and being able to share this along with you guys to be a part of this. So what I want to do now is, again, we're going to see if anybody has questions in the chat, but if not, before we sign off, I want to go back and pull up those questions, Tanya. Wait a minute, let me see. I think my brother Robert put something up here. I want to go back into the chat and follow up on being the best DN that has come through the Colts. How did you fight off? Oh, Rob, this is a question for you. I'm sorry, I thought it was for you, Rob. It says, being the best defensive end that has come through the Colts, how did you fight off criticism on your size?
By doing. It was strictly responding to, well, first off, not allowing that to be the driving force, but just being the best player that you can be, and just knowing what you're able to bring to the table and actually bring it to the table. So the common theme is grind. People like George and Miles, they say the grind is real. So in order to prove your worth to people, you have to put the time in. So that was the main thing. I just had to outwork everybody.
This next question is from Cameron Boyd. Cameron has a question to George Hill. Being where you are now, how important were family and close friends to you?
I mean, family and friends was really close to me. And anyone who really know me knows I lost a lot of family over the last years in my life. So family, I'm pretty much the only one left in the 30s as a male and on my dad's side of the family. So it's crazy. So family and friends is very important. But like I talked about, you have to learn how to distance yourself from things that may put you in bad situations. And sometimes that's distance yourself from family and friends, which is the hardest thing to do. Sometimes your family doesn't have your best interest. And people sometimes don't understand that. They think, oh, family's family. No, family's family, but sometimes family is your worst critic and your worst enemy. So knowing which family members are there for you as a man and as someone that what you believe in and not there for the sport that you play. And your friends is, like I said, you get your close group of friends that you can trust, that you believe in, that's going to always put you in great situations and not tell you the things that you want to hear, but be honest with you. When you're wrong and you fuck up, your friends should tell you that you fuck up or you made that mistake, and surrounding yourself by positive friends. And that's the biggest thing.
And then Miles, this question is for you. It says, have people tried to take away your courage of being Black? If so, how do you deal with it?
Oh man, of course. Yeah, I told y'all, especially, coming from where I'm coming from, it's like people have this perception of you, like I was saying before, like when you speak well, like when you're present at certain functions and whatnot, they see him as, oh, he's one of us, he's one of the friendly ones. And they try to put this good boy stigma on you. And what I mean by that is, you're not someone that's going to rattle the cages or, try to quote unquote fight the power or go against the grain. So I've been told to, keep quiet on certain subjects. I've been told to, watch my step and all that, but I've never have. I'm very proud of who I am and where I come from and my background. So, I always, put my feelings on display. I'm not as active as I was once on social media, but anytime I get a chance to do a forum like this or to speak on it, I always, I'm very pro-Black and I always will be. I feel like as a Black man in America, especially, you have to maneuver in certain lanes to get by and just to get through. But I'll never denounce or renounce where I came from or who I am.
So that goes back to, again, understanding and loving who you are as a person. That self-confidence goes a long way, even on the basketball court, the football, in the classroom. The biggest thing is falling in love with yourself. I can't stress that enough. Getting to know who you are, no matter what you think, like the lights may not come back on tomorrow. Failure is just temporary. None of that. Failure doesn't last always. And I have 3 things that I talk about when we talk about failure in life. Failure is temporary. Failure doesn't last always. Failure is usually a precursor to success. Rob talked about that earlier. When you're able to weather the storm, amazing things will happen. Failure is a testimony and invaluable experience. Don't be afraid to share your truth. Your experiences are made to make or break you. Life will teach you if you let it. I got another question for George. How intense was the day of the boycott in the locker room?
I mean, it wasn't intense at all. At first, it was kind of weird because I was the only one who pretty much stood for something. I think after, the word got out that I wasn't playing, one of my close friends, Sterling Brown, who had altercation with police officers in Milwaukee where they hurt him a little bit and roughed him up. He stood secondly and said he didn't want me to go out there and stand alone, so he stands with me. And then pretty much the team kind of did a domino effect and stood their ground after that. So as far as intensity of it, it wasn't intense because I already knew what was in my heart, already knew what I stood for. And me wearing that jersey and that name on the front of my jersey, for me to go out there and play for a city that they let this happen, and then that chief of police officer say it wouldn't have happened if the guys would have just been in the house during curfew, just showed no remorse. So I couldn't bear with it. I couldn't stand for it. But I was fine with whatever consequences came with it because that's who I was as a man and that's what I stood for. So I was fine with dealing with any consequence because at the end of the day, money doesn't define who we are. Humanity does.
Wow, that's big, G, because that's what we're talking about when we talk about being agents of change. what are you willing to sacrifice? Miles, someone asked the question, considering you came out of college as a freshman, you seem to be very articulate. How important is education?
Oh my gosh, bro. It wouldn't be a day if I had heard that one. Yeah. So, you know, like I said, thankfully I came from a 2-parent household where my mom, like, she didn't fuck around. It was like my dad was like, you know, basketball. My mom was very on me about my grades from a very young age. I did all honors courses when I was in high school. During the school year, I wasn't allowed to watch TV or play video games. Like, I'm not saying you got to go to these lengths, but this is just how my parents were. You know, I wasn't allowed to watch TV, play video games. Had to turn my phone off by like 5:30, 6 o'clock. It was a lot, but it kept me very focused and it kept me on because all I can do was focus on basketball and school. So I never really had any other outlet in a sense. So it came to a point where the grind, how we've been alluding to this entire time, education was a grind too. And I kind of just fell in love with the process of it. You know, I kind of enjoyed being able to, you know, be, I don't know what, 12 years old and be in a room full of adults and hold myself in conversation, you know, stuff like that. So I just took pride in where I came from and took pride in who I was. So when I got to college, I took some very like tedious courses. You know, psychology was going to be my major. Knowingly so that I was going to go to the NBA. Or I knew about halfway through the year, but knowingly so I was going to go to the NBA. I started to work more on the basketball side of things. But to this day, you know, I still try to read books. I still try to keep myself engaged, and I plan on getting my degree one day. So I just think that my parents, well, really my mom, you hear the whole "you don't pass, you don't play." My mom ain't let me like play if I brought C's home. If I brought 70,
Wow.
80 and below, like she would literally, bro, like, okay, funny story. So we were in an AAU tournament. I was like, had to be a freshman or in high school or sophomore year. She walked down the middle of the floor and pulled me from the game because I brought a 79 home, a 79. Wow. And like, you would think that like, that, you know, it's funny, it's just that, but that's how serious she was about it. And knowing how serious she was, I knew that I couldn't mess up. So having that stability behind me was really what got me to where I was. You know, so like I said, thankfully I had a parent that got me there, but I would encourage everybody to stay on their grades because like it is a big deal. You don't pass in high school, like they won't allow you to play in college. And that's a huge deal, you know, if you're trying to get over to the next level. So yeah.
That's important, guys. And then Rob, I got a question for you. Someone said, what was the motivation that made you decide to not give up?
Well, one was my mother. You know, she was a single parent home and raising 6 kids by herself. And we actually had, here's a story. It's not funny, but a story all the same. It was my sophomore year in college. So we had just got done with spring ball. So I go home and we on spring break. So there's a knock on the door. My mom was at work. You know, she used to clean houses and whatnot. And it was the U.S. Marshal. So they banging on the door. So I get up and they just like, well, we have an eviction notice. So I'm thinking like, man, you can't be serious. But they ended up putting all our stuff out on the front lawn. And so my mom, she rushed home and she just started like bawling, crying, like she was just helplessly crying. And that lit a fire in me like I can't describe it. It's like, okay, as long as I have air in my lungs, I'm never going to let this happen again. And that just kind of just really centered my focus to achieve my goal. I don't care how I was going to do it. I was in a black college, still undersized, whatever, but I didn't give a damn. It was like, okay, I'm getting to the league. I'm going to get my mama a house, a car, and I'm going to live happily ever after. And there's a whole lot more to that story that went into the grind, but that was the gist of it. That was the situation that brought problems to a whole lot of offensive linemen.
Wow. So what I want to do right now, before we get ready to sign out of here, I want to pull up the polling questions real quick, just to make sure, because the most important thing is making sure young people understand what it takes to be a great civilian, no matter how far you make it in life, what it takes to be able to understand how to share, how to compete, and how to unify yourself. So Tanya, if you can bring the first question up for me real quick. It's just 3 quick questions real quick. And then, so if you can look at your screens and answer that for me. The first question is, after listening to the speakers, I better understand how to be an agent of change. This will take a couple of minutes, just a minute, and then we've got a couple of more questions for the guys. Okay, and then the next question is, let's get the next question up, Tanya, please. After listening to the speakers, I better understand how to be civically engaged and I advocate on behalf of issues that I care about. Like, for example, fighting for George Floyd, fighting for equal rights, fighting for better education, fighting for health care. A few more votes coming in. Okay, and then the last one. After listening to the speakers, I better understand. After listening to the speakers, I am more committed to strive for academic and career success regardless of my circumstances. So we got a few more votes coming in. Okay. That's good. All right, thank you. So now what I want to do is a couple of the young men that Nehemiah, who was it? Matthew Spears and KJ Seymour, Cameron Boyd, and Darrell Robinson. I need you to email me your email address, because I told you for those that participated in the questions, we're going to give you, I'm going to send you something in Cash App, just a little token just for participating in the Zoom call, because that's part of stepping outside of your comfort zone to do things better. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Making the Right Play Real Talk forum, focusing in on social justice, presented by Indiana Black Expo and the Eli Lilly Foundation. We will be doing another one of these soon. My goal is to try to get us in person eventually at some point, but I want to thank my brothers, Miles Turner, George Hill, Robert Mathis, Jacoby Brissett, and all of the coaches and the mentors that tuned in tonight, and especially the young men that took time out of their day to tune in. You know, a lot of people, again, don't understand how much of a privilege this is to be able to have this kind of situation, and to be somebody that is willing to invest in yourself, because that's what this shows. You know, a lot of people think that they're going to go pro. A lot of people think they got the skill set to be successful. But these are the kind of things that you have no idea what success is because you've never seen it. But now you're talking and hearing it from people who have gone through different lengths to be successful. So thank you for all that tuned in. I want to make sure I got those emails. If I didn't, email me at ampharris@gmail.com. Those guys, the students that I mentioned, email me at ampharris@gmail.com to make sure I have your Cash App. And I want to send you something just for stepping outside of your comfort zone. So guys, have a happy Thanksgiving. I appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight on behalf of Indiana Black Expo and the Lilly Foundation and Paris Productions. God bless, have a good day, and a happy Thanksgiving. Peace and blessings, y'all.